Breaking news. Biava's coin is on a run. Scandal breaks out in the world of camel beauty pageants. You heard me. And there's a new religion emerging in the wild west of cryptocurrencies. It's a Crypto Currently Show. Thank you. Yes, once again, the Crypto Currently Show Friday edition. Friday we're going to wrap it up, take the weekend off, and we will talk to you on Monday. Except for Sunday on YouTube. If you guys want to hear the Sunday morning stories, I will be posting that on YouTube at some point your time that will be morning. All right. A dozen camels disqualified from Saudi beauty pageant over Botox injections. That's a real thing that happened in the world. And evidently, if you dive a little bit deeper into the story, this is a real scandal because there's evidently says real money is at stake. About 57 million is awarded to winners of the contest and camel races, and about 31.8 million of that 57 is just for the pageants. $31 million for camels, for camel beauty pageants. That's real. That is a thing that happens in the world. So when people, want to brag about how far we've come as a people, how far we've progressed as a society and all the advancements that we've made, just keep in mind that there's over $30 million a year in camel beauty pageants. All right, it's these kind of things that'll keep you humble, people. I'm just here to give spiritual wisdom, man. You got to keep it all in context. Now, Biava's coin, big run right now. It's doing very well, and it's gone past the moon, and it's now got its eyeballs on Mars. You might want to look them up on their website. Biava's coin, BYOBS. That stands for buying into your own bullshit. There's a lot of that going around in the cryptocurrency market, so I recommend selling off the farm and going heavy on BYOBS coin. Want to talk about this. This is the things that we talk about on the show. Like, if you're going to be in this market, you're going to have to be confident that you know people, right? These are the tendency is to think that there's some supercomputer somewhere making all these highfalutin decisions, and it's all very chartable, and it's all very methodical and whatever. But it's not. It's just people. And people are they're pretty predictable. Even in their even when people do unpredictable things, you can predict that they're at least going to do that, something unpredictable. And want to talk about that a little bit today because I was watching a video on Doug Polk, and he did a video, and it kind of inspired me to talk about it. See, here's the thing, like I was putting together my thing on Steemit that I told you guys about the other day. And as I was doing that, Altcoin Buzz put out a video on Steemit. And I even wrote those guys a letter. I was like, damn it, man, you beat me to it. Here's the thing, like a lot of these conclusions that people come to, like I'm noticing a lot of us arrive at this stuff at the same time. And then on top of that, somebody can do a story that I'll see, and it'll inspire me to take it into a different direction. So I'm not stealing from Doug Polk, all right? I like that guy, and I think that you should subscribe to his videos, and you should watch his video today on the thing that I'm going to be talking about. But mine's just a little bit different. I grew up just like a lot of you grew up. Most of us grew up going to Sunday school when we were kids. Right? For those of you that went through that or had that as a kind of a staple in your life, so did I. And growing up in Christian circles, we got to see a lot of different things. Not all of them were good. There was a lot of good, but some of us got to see things like what happens when hierarchical. What happens when the power in the hierarchy goes awry? Well, let's just say. The kind of abuses that people will do when they get just a little communion cup full of power, right? It makes some people blackout drunk. They get drunk with power, and then a lot of bad things happen. But having seen that, like if that's in your past, if that's something that you have made mental note of, then you can kind of see it when it's coming, when it happens in other areas. And when people start talking in terms, if they're talking about business, but their rhetoric is very religious, you can see it because it's like, oh no, I've been around this my whole life, partner. I can see this coming in. We are in the Wild West of cryptocurrencies. It keeps getting referred to as the Wild West because it is very much like that. And what would you see? I talked about this on one of my earliest podcasts, but what would you see if you were in the Wild West? Well, you would see bandits, right? Thieves, people of low character. You would see people getting wiped out by smallpox and tuberculosis and that sort of. There would be disease, right? And there would be people dying from childbirth, right? Kids getting polio. You know what I mean? Like, it was not a good place. Like, it's nice to think that it was just like it was when we saw Val Kilmer playing Doc Holliday, which was a brilliant performance, and I love Val Kilmer, but the fact is Doc Holliday was not a good dude. Not at all. He was a very angry person, and he killed a lot of people. But it's referred to as the Wild West. What else would you see? What else would you see in the Wild West? Well, you would see things like a kind of vacuum when it came to law and order and justice, right? Like back in those days, like if you were playing cards with somebody and somebody accused you of cheating, you could shoot that person and then stand before a judge and say, well, he accused me of being a cheater. And the judge would say, well, okay, sir, dismissed, off you go. No, no harm, no foul. That's crazy. I mean, people used to be hung by the neck till they were dead for stealing a horse, right? And why was that? Well, because a horse represented transportation, and if you took my means of transportation, that means I can't go get to work, which means I can't make money. And if I don't have money, I can't feed my family, and if I can't feed my family is in life or death sort of peril. And so by you stealing my horse, ipso facto, you threatened my family, and therefore people would get hung to death for stealing a horse. I mean, it sounds crazy, doesn't it? But there was a time when that, not only did it happen, but it made sense to those people. You know what I'm saying? The Wild West was crazy. But one last thing, obviously there's a lot more other things that we will get into as this show evolves that talks about what else would we see in the Wild West and how does that compare to what we see today. Why is it that the Wild West is such a good analogy for what we're seeing right now? It's because everything that happened in the Wild West we can see right now. We can make comparisons and we can contrast these ideas and we can better navigate our way through this market by looking at it that way. But one other thing, as I was trying to get to, and I'm sorry it's taken me so long, but one other thing that we would see in the Wild West is the emergence of new religions, right? Did you ever see There Will Be Blood with the great Daniel Day-Lewis? Brilliant movie. And you remember the religious guy, right? Well, that happened a lot. There were all these different kind of splinters of Christianity that happened. And people started their own little version of Christianity. And why does this happen, though? Why, like, if something like that reoccurs and reoccurs and reoccurs, like if it's something that happens, some guy in Arizona did it, and then some guy in Minnesota did it, and then some guy in Washington did it, like, if things like that happen, if it becomes common, then we can assume that there is something in our DNA that causes that to happen, right? And what is that? What is that? And can we identify that and navigate around it? Because let me tell you something, that is an iceberg and we are on the Titanic, right? You do not want to run aground on a false religion. We're seeing that in the cryptocurrency markets. what happens is there's something in us that wants to be right, needs to be right. We One problem with people is that once we get locked into a belief, it's hard to change it. It's hard to be shown that that belief is wrong, right? The reason why Jim Jones can convince a room full of people to drink cyanide is because to do otherwise would be to admit that you were wrong. And people would literally rather die than do that. It's crazy, isn't it? But it's in all of us. It's in me. It's in you. It's in all of us to do that. And if we can accept that, and we can study that within ourselves and know, like, oh no, this is a weakness in me. It's also a great strength, right? Belief is a powerful thing that must be used. But it must be used responsibly, right? But there's as I said before, like there is a to everything, even belief. Like there is a holy and a profane. And when belief becomes profane, that's where weird religions start cropping up, and that's why we have had so many different weird little religions. Some of them even exist to this day. There's a number of them. There's more than two. All right, I could sit here and name a couple because this is an area of my life that I'm pretty well versed in. But beware of those things, and beware that you don't get caught up in them, lest ye take a drink of some fruit punch at a meeting sometime. Also, you don't want to be the guy that gets a Messiah complex. That happens. Have you ever heard of there's an actual thing, an actual mental disorder called the Jerusalem syndrome. It's well documented. Now think about this as I explain this to you. There are people, a lot of people, that when they visit the Holy Land, they go to Jerusalem, right? And when they get there, they start believing that they are chosen to do some great thing, or that they are themselves Jesus Christ incarnate. That's a thing that happens a lot. There's books written on the subject. Mark Maron, the comedian, he fell victim to that himself, and he wrote about it. I think he even told some jokes about it. But that's a real thing that happens, that you and I and people are susceptible to this sort of mental disorder. That we can believe that we are something that we're not. And this is one thing that's happening in the cryptocurrency market. And it's happening, I have one example for you today, but it's certainly not the only one. I've seen it in a couple of other instances. But this is buying your own bullshit. And we have to be careful of that. Belief is a good thing. Buying your own bullshit is profane. And I want to talk about this today. And again, I'm sorry, Doug Polk, if you're listening, I'm not trying, your video today inspired me to delve into this a little bit deeper. I'm not trying to copy your work or ride your coattails or anything like that. I love you. Love your work. Please keep it coming. I watch every day. There is a man who is referred to as crypto Jesus. I'm sorry, Bitcoin Jesus, right? Just that alone, right there. Okay, now I am a follower of Jesus Christ. Not a very good one. I cuss and sometimes I drink and whatever. But if I ever ascend any sort of notoriety, if I get 1 million YouTube followers and 100,000 downloads on my podcast a day, if anybody starts ever referring to me as any kind of Jesus, I will stomp that shit out quickly. All right? Jesus is the savior of mankind. I'm the guy that needed saving. All right? Let's be clear on that. At no point will I ever allow, within my own power, will I allow people to refer to me that way. And anybody who does allow themselves to be referred to as the Messiah, that's a problem. Right there. You think, oh, no, it's just a nickname. Not that one. Not that one. So, Crypto Jesus, I don't want to use his name. For the same reasons I don't like saying the actual word Kardashian. Because the more I say the word Kardashian, the more strength they have to be famous another day. And it pains me that I've just used that name twice, right? I've just given them 2 more days of being famous. It drives me nuts. Those people have done nothing. And for the same reason, I'm not going to use this guy's name, because I'm sure that you guys are probably aware of who I'm talking about. And if you're not, it would probably take you about 20 seconds on Google to figure it out. But this is a guy that, here's the problem. Keeping in context, what we're talking about here is when people start talking in religious terms, when they start using faith-based rhetoric, when they're talking about something that has nothing to do with that, okay? Now, if I'm an auto mechanic and you bring your car to me to fix it, and I tell you that what you need to do to fix that car is, to retreat to a monastery for 2 weeks and, commit to a vow of silence for 14 days. Okay, that doesn't fit. You know what I'm saying? Now, going to a monastery for 2 weeks and committing to silence for 2 weeks and fasting and praying and drinking water and getting good sleep, like, that's good for you, but it doesn't belong in this conversation. And when people start talking that way, that should be your bullshit meter, right? That should tell you that this person has heavily speculated on Biabas coin, buying your own bullshit coin. This is what religious rhetoric sounds like. I will quote Marx before I read. All right? I'm reading this, and I want to make sure that you understand that the quote marks are there. This is what the guy said, quote, "And when I realized that Bitcoin has the potential to undermine every government on the entire planet's ability to wage war, I knew I had to get involved and start promoting Bitcoin full time." Wow. So you end quote, sorry. So let's just take the first 4 words of this quote. Now, if you find this boring or whatever, you can just stop, because this is what the show, this is where we're going today, all right? But let's just cut out those first 4 words of that sentence. And when I realized, those are 1, 2, 3, 4. And when I realized. When I realized, when I had my awakening, it was as if God came down and pulled the veils from my eyes, and lo, I could see the future, right? That's powerful. When somebody starts off a sentence with, "and when I realized," it's like, oh boy, okay, I'm either about to convert to a new religion or I'm going to join Amway. When people start saying stuff like that, and when I realized, like, that's in this context. And when I realized that I could undermine the ability for people on this planet to wage war, peace on earth is what he's talking about. And when I realized that I could bring about peace on earth with money, with this new form of currency, okay? New religion, people. That's religious rhetoric. And you must beware. This guy has 500,000 followers just on Twitter alone. I have no idea what the full extent of this man's reach is. But I can tell you this, that's religion. That is religious rhetoric. And this man has completely bet the farm on Biabas coin. He's fully in, he's all in. Okay, in poker terms, I'm a poker player, by the way, not professionally. I could never sit down with Doug Polk and play poker with that guy. I would lose. Same way, if I got into an argument, or if I was ever accused of anything by Trey Gowdy, I would lose. If I ever got into an argument with Ben Shapiro, I would lose. But all in. That's what this guy is. He's completely pot committed on his position. And when I realized that Bitcoin, money, okay, Bitcoin is currency. So when I realized that this money has the potential to undermine every government on the entire planet's ability to wage war. Okay, so not only does he believe that he can bring peace on earth, he also believes that he can undermine the governments of the world. That's there's a point where if you've got big balls, it's impressive, but there's a certain point where your balls get so big that it's crippling, and all you are is a cripple, right? King Solomon wrote 2,700 years ago, arrogance goes before destruction. The word he used was pride, but that's before pride meant what it means today. Like I'm proud of my son, or I'm proud of, whatever. I'm proud of my country, or I'm proud of, whatever. Arrogance goes before destruction, always. He wasn't saying some flowery saying. He was saying, no, there is an immutable law in the universe that says if you're arrogant, you're going to fall. That's it. That's the end. That's how that works, and it does not work any other way. If you are arrogant, you will fall. And when you start talking about, oh no, when I realized that I could bring about world peace with money and that I could affect it, like, whoa. Okay. All right. Now, if you go to this man's Twitter page, if you actually do, if as you're listening to this, you still don't know who I'm talking about, and you do look it up and you go onto this man's Twitter page, you will notice there's a banner right across the top of it where he quotes Frédéric Bastiat, who said, by virtue of exchange, one man's prosperity is beneficial to all others. Now, I actually agree with that. That's a good saying. If it's in its proper context, it's absolutely correct. If I have $1 million, if you have $1 million, let's make this about you, because that's what this show is about. Actually, it's about you and me. But if you have $1 million, you go and you take half of that money and you buy a piece of land. Then you take the other half of that money and you build a house on that land. Watch how this works. This is a magical concept in money. It's talked about in The Richest Man in Babylon. You can read about this. And that's where I'm stealing this from. Sorry, I'm plagiarizing here. But you buy, you take $1 million, you buy a property, and you build a house on it. Well, number one, now you have property, and the property owner is $500,000 better off. He's got $500,000 in cash now. The other $500,000 went to buy lumber from the guy who sells lumber, or girl, and it went to the concrete and foundation guys. It went to the plumbers. It went to the drywall guys, the electricians. It went to, you put furnishings in your house, so it went to the people who sell appliances and rocking chairs and couches and TVs and all that other stuff. Like, your money gets spread out all over your community, right? Now, you would think that would be a bad thing because now you don't have your $1 million and everybody else has it. But not so. You actually have more than $1 million now because the value of that home that you built is worth considerably more than $1 million. And your neighbors, their property value went up too. Because now you have demonstrated to the whole world that yours is a neighborhood worth living in and investing in. So even your neighbors made money off of you spending that $1 million, which you still have and more, and the whole community also has $1 million. You see how that works? It's a magical concept. So in that example, by virtue of exchange, right? Because that's what you did when you bought that property and paid all those people to build that house. By virtue of exchange, my prosperity benefits everyone by virtue of exchange. Now, when you take a man who says, I can bring about world peace through money, I don't have to address the human condition. I don't have to address the fact that war is something that's in our blood. It's a flaw, right? Anger and greed and lust and all the things that are bad for the human condition. That's where war comes from. And this guy is saying like, oh no, I can circumvent all of that. We don't need a savior. We don't need to address the fact that people are in the words of Dr. Kelso, people are bastard-filled bastards with bastard coding. You know what I mean? This guy's saying in one quote, he's saying, I can bring about world peace. I can cure this problem with money. And then he goes on, and his also he's using a famous quote, by virtue of exchange, one man's prosperity is beneficial to all others. You know what that's another way of saying? When it's not used, when that phrase is used outside of the context of exchange, which is the fourth word in that verse, by virtue of, number 4, exchange. When you take that quote outside of the context of exchange, then when you use it, what you're really saying is, no matter what happens, as long as I'm prosperous, I am a benefit to all others. This is a sickness, people. You have to understand this. The reason I talk about, trading, and yes, I do pepper in some things that I think are good trades, but mostly what I'm talking about is our mentality and keeping safe, mostly from ourselves. Keeping safe from yourself and keeping safe from other people who have no idea that they need to protect themselves from themselves. And this is one guy who's clearly off the reservation, where he doesn't even realize, like, he can't even hear himself speak anymore. It's like, whoa, brother, you're talking like you're the Messiah. And then on top of all that, the one thing that you want people to see when they go to your Twitter page is saying, look, as long as I'm prosperous, I am benefiting everybody else. My prosperity is in of itself proof that I'm helping. I'm helping. All right? Beware of these people. Beware of these people. Please. These people are, they carry the kind of arrogance that King Solomon said, this leads to a bad place. This cannot go anywhere other than a bad place. This is going south, and you will be destroyed, because that's what arrogance does. So that's the new religion. We're seeing it. That's what I said. I said this weeks ago. In the Wild West, one of the things that you're going to see is the emergence of new religions. And this isn't the only guy that's talking this way. I've seen two other people, the Tron guy and one other guy, using this kind of religious rhetoric. This sort of, I can change the world by way of me being rich, and I can cure the human condition with money. That's not just dangerous. It leads to catastrophe. It's dangerous, and it's predictable. It's very predictable. Anytime you have a new world, which we have here in the cryptocurrency markets, just like when America was first, the colonials came, and then the settlers came, and the settlers started branching out west, and that's where the Wild West started. It was, mid 1800s or whatever, and that was a crazy place. And every movie and every book that you can read about the West in that time it was crazy. It's crazy people, and it's an absolute miracle that it even survived. You know what I mean? Let alone flourish the way that it did. Like we got through that okay, and I believe that will happen in the cryptocurrency market. I believe that if you stick it out for the long term, you'll be okay, right? And that's why I talk about things like don't hold on for dear life. Buy your position and let go for dear life. Don't let your mind get too caught up in this stuff, right? It's the Wild West. Buy your piece of land in California and hope that eventually someday people will want to move to California. You know what I mean? That, and I think that's a really good analogy. Back in the day, people didn't want to live in California. It was far away. They didn't know anybody there because there was nobody there, and there was nothing there, right? California's a great place to live now, but man, back in the day, nobody wanted to live there. So it's the same thing with cryptocurrencies. The idea is buy your real estate now and just give it a couple, let go of it, and just hope to God that someday people will want to live in San Diego, But these kind of people, very, very dangerous. And if you look at Doug Polk's video today on YouTube, you will see how fragile this man's ego truly is. There's a part in there where the man I'm speaking of was being interviewed by just looks like just a regular old podcaster, like a guy like me. You know what I mean? And he gives him a slight insult. Literally. I don't think that if you gave me an hour, I could come up with a less offensive insult to level at somebody. He gives him this slight insult, and this man's veins shot out of his neck, and the thing with the forehead, in between the eyes, that thing they get when people go crazy, and his face turns red, and he gives this guy the middle finger into the camera, and like it's just, you can see his muscles, like he's using all of like the fast twitch muscle in his finger, like to give this guy the middle finger, like he's just angry, like and it's like, whoa, guy, wow, you don't have a lot of people around you. It looks like you don't have anybody that's there to rub up against you and tell you that you're wrong. Clearly, everybody in your life, it insulates you from that sort of thing, because if that insult brings out the demon, what? Yikes. You can, and I think that you should see it for yourself. So, I know a lot of you guys listen to this podcast on the way to work. Go check out on YouTube, check out Doug Polk. It's just type in Doug Polk and you'll go right to it. It's like Doug Polk video or something like that. But look up Doug Polk and look at today's today's show, and you'll see. Actually, when you hear this, it'll be yesterday's show. I'm sorry. So look at that and ask yourself, like, does that look like a stable, level-headed person who makes wise decisions? Does that look like a person who has nothing but the best intentions in their heart for mankind, and has the sound mind to carry those things out? And if you see this the way that I see it, you watch. It may not be in a year, it may not be in 5 years, it may not even be in 30 years, right? This guy might not get what's coming to him until he draws his very last breath. But the one thing I can assure you of is this, is that kind of arrogance, it always leads to destruction. And that being said, this is why I said all of that. You can bet on that. You can invest in that. And you guys know how I feel about that word, investment. But here's how you invest in it. You keep your money squarely away from anything that guy does. You stay away from it. You stay away from that guy. And you make decisions about your money revolving around avoiding whatever it is that guy's recommending. Right? Because that guy's going to fall, and it ain't going to be pretty. So that's the show for today. That's the week, people. We got through it. It's Friday. And again, please, down at the bottom of this podcast, click like, click share, click subscribe. And over this weekend, if you can take a minute, go onto my YouTube channel and hit subscribe. And if you say, well, it doesn't show me a subscription thing, that's because you don't have your own YouTube account. If you could, I think you have to put in your name and email. And then you can hit subscribe to my channel, Cryptocurrently. The notes are down in the link is down in the bottom to my YouTube show. Go ahead and click on that, because the more followers I get, the more subscribers that I get, the more that helps me out with Google Analytics and gets me to the point where I can start making some money, folks. And of course, the more money I get, the closer I am to solving all of the world's problems through money, right? See how I tied that in there? Nothing? Okay, I'll show myself out. Thanks for tuning in this week, guys. We'll see you on Monday.